we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll begin, let's see, a little bit early, make sure these guys are on. Let's go ahead and get started with Jason Kersey, the athletic, and we'll go to Eric Bailey. Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Real quick, can I get recording permission? I'm sorry. I should have asked a minute.
Yep.
Hey, Alex, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Does things I guess I'll just start. Do things feel any differently going into Big 12 play? I mean, you only have one non-conference game. Is this sort of a weird opening to conference play this year?
I think overall the thing you look at is just and you always believe the practice is important. I think this year you times that by 100. You have to be able to and you never can quite simulate exactly what goes on a game day in practice, but you got to look at, we started back in the middle of January, or should be January. I wish January, July. And so we've been going for a couple months now. And in typical fashion, I think to your point, is you'd have a couple of games on your belt as you approach this week. And so, what again becomes as paramount as it's ever going to be is those practice reps. You have to be able to learn lessons in practice, whether it's penalties, whether it's response to adversity. You don't have the cumulative game reps to kind of draw from. Obviously, years past and all those things, but the 2020 version of us doesn't. And so that's what practice has turned into is trying to simulate kind of the emotional response to a good play and how you're going to respond to an emotional response to a bad play. Because again, I think to your point is everything gets cranked up another level when you're talking about conference play and playing Power 5 football. And so those practice reps are increasingly important.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
Okay, Eric Bailey and then Bob Prisbillo.
Hey, Alex, I wanted to ask you about Pat Fields, selected as a team captain this season. How much did he have that leadership trait when you arrived, and how much has that accelerated over the past 2 seasons?
Well, I think it has accelerated. I think a lot of times, what happens with guys, and then, until you're playing good football, until you're a consistent member of any organization, but obviously, specific to us defensively, the guys that have the biggest voice are the guys that, one, play, and then number two, play at a consistent level. It's very difficult to be a leader. And if you're, constantly on the roller coaster in terms of, one, doing the things, right, both on and off the field. But, number two is, if you're one of those guys that is taking the appropriate opportunities to be a leader, which look more like a positive role as opposed to a negative role. And so, what Pat has done is he's coupled it, the fact that he's played and coupled with, his ability to do things right consistently, both on and off the field. And what happens in those moments is, or in those instances, is you got a voice that guys respond to. And so he's taking advantage of that. It suits him. It suits us. We need him to be that guy for us. Sometimes, the course of my career, you kind of cringe sometimes when you call a guy a leader. You say, wait a second, I don't know that he does enough things right to be the leader of your defense or your position room, something like along those lines. But thrilled for him and thrilled for us that, quality guy that the guys respond to.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, Bob Prisbillo and then Ryan Aber.
Yeah, Alex, we talk a lot during preseason camp about cross-training. Have you maybe stumbled upon one or two players that as you were doing that, they were actually a more natural fit at that second spot compared to where you had them?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I think I kind of circle back to the game or the lack of game rep, kind of a reality that we find ourselves in. You see some guys that show well in practice. I think probably the biggest thing we've seen is some guys that have been able to kind of put that on their plate that they otherwise, may have surprised us that way. Could they handle playing both, as simple as being the Mike and the Will linebacker, just because the picture is a little bit different than the formation adjustments and some of those things, strong safety and free safety. So even though some of those are kind of minute changes, how much these guys can put on their plate been overall pretty impressed. Corner moving to a safety moving to corner. So I think to highlight someone specifically, I think we got to get into some games and kind of, some more game reps under our belt. But you saw Isaiah Thomas, I think, kind of stands out just because he made some plays in that first game. He's a guy that actually did it on a Saturday playing, interior defensive line. Got to spend a career guy on the edge, and he'll do both for us as we go. And so been pleased with that. And again, would highlight him just because he's done it in the game.
Okay, let's go to Ryan Aber and then Joe Bettner.
Yeah, Alex, you've talked about a couple of these guys recently, Pat Fields and Isaiah Thomas specifically, but a lot of contributors on your defense seem to be from Tulsa this year. And I know part of that is just the coincidence of those guys, doing what they needed to do. But how important is that area of the state for you? And just what have you seen out of that region, since you've been around recruiting?
Yeah, no, and that's an area that would not just be a regional area. Going back to history and being at other places. I mean, that when you talk about some of the elite programs in Tulsa, regardless of where you're at, on either coast, it's an area that you're conscious of, and you know that there's high level football being played there, and high level guys coming out of there. You mentioned the guys that we have right now, and you're right. I mean, it's an area for us that I think sometimes the misnomer in 2020 so much is national recruiting and it's driven by websites and those things, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think sometimes there's a misnomer as if our life gets so much easier if we could get a guy from hours and hours and hours away. And thousands of miles away, as opposed to getting a quality player, down the street and only a couple hours away type of deal. And so, and I say that's a misnomer because, if we could sign everybody out of the state of Oklahoma every year, tell me why we wouldn't want to do that. Now they have to have, they have to play up to a standard that's, worthy of Oklahoma, but there's certainly a number of guys year to year that's the case. But no, that's an area that we're constantly evaluating, and an area that you talk about quality football, both coached and played. That we appreciate the fact that it's in our state.
Appreciate it, Alex.
Okay, Joe Bettner and then Keegan Renault.
To stay on recruiting for a second, Alex, you guys obviously had a home game already and a bye week, and just with that time that would have probably been spent bringing guys onto campus for recruiting trips, how different has that been with just not having that, I guess, in-person contact on a game day, and how are you guys staying engaged with those recruits?
Well, it couldn't get a whole lot more different, honestly. Most bye weeks are spent at least a couple of days on the road, or at least portion of your staff on the road. You mentioned game day. Both pregame and postgame, get a chance to see some guys. And, one of the things that you're constantly, when you're on the phone with guys and FaceTime with guys, you're constantly saying, come to a game, come to a game, come to a game, just so, because you have such a great product and such a great venue here at Oklahoma, that you want to sell. And so that like I said, couldn't be any more different. I will say, when you're talking about the recruiting side of things, I mean, there's always two sides of it. One, it's bringing guys in to sell them on you, and then the other side of it is the evaluation aspect of things. And so that both those things are different and equally so in terms of what side, both those sides being important. And so, if evaluating guys remotely was the best way to get an evaluation of individuals that you are looking to possibly bring into your program. We would have done this a long time ago. Video conferencing is not new, and so that aspect of things is different. It's watching video. Some guys aren't playing. Some guys haven't played yet. It's they didn't have spring track, and so you're trying to see how guys developed. You didn't have the summer camp circuit, and so that aspect of things that is just a critical piece of the NFL about evaluations and all the misses they have on draft day, and they have ample amounts more information than a college coach will ever have. So again, just the evaluation aspect of things is something that is different, and we gotta fight and battle to make sure that we're making the appropriate ones, despite the circumstances. And then equally, again, those guys already evaluated to continue to develop a relationship remotely, and it's one that has always been an element to it. Because obviously you can only see them so many times during the course of the year. They got their season, so that's not, probably in a lot of ways that's the one that's most similar, because you do make so many phone calls and text messages and stuff like that as you develop relationships. But you do miss the one-on-one, and you miss the game day, and so that's just something that it's not going away anytime soon. And so we got to do the best with it, and find a way to sign the best class possible.
Thank you.
We'll go to Keegan Renault and then James Hale.
Alex, you talked during preseason camp about not wanting guys to be the same players they were a year ago. And the product on the field, obviously, in the first game, I think is something that you wanted to see. But just the overall culture of this defense, is it at a place that you want it to be at right now?
Yeah, I think, limited evaluation, as you go into only game 2 of the season. It's probably more enjoyable to go to practice. I mean, honestly, that's probably a silly statement to make, but and really what I mean by that is just, you hear other voices kind of saying the things that, you as a coaching staff were maybe the only ones saying a year ago, at least at this point. As the season went on, obviously, and I still commend that group in terms of the 2019 group on the buy-in. But just being able to coach more of the details of the position, coach more of the fundamentals of the position, coach more, maybe less about big picture scheme stuff, how we're going to get lined up. And so I think, what it gives you is a chance to, because they want to be coached different. They don't want to be coached the same way, and one of the things that when we talk about being a different guy is we're talking about not being content with just being where you're supposed to be. We probably spent too much time, you got to evaluate it. You look at it as a coach, we spent too much time just trying to get guys where they're supposed to be. Oh, by the way, there's a play that has to be made at the end of that play, and I don't know that we did a good enough job, and maybe you can't do a good enough job in the first year. I don't know, but we got to assume you can, and certainly can do a better job in year 2 is saying, okay, this is your job. What's the mission? Okay. The mission is the football. The mission is to make that play. You just can't say, I got my job done. You other 10 go make a play. And so I've seen that difference. Again, it's in practice, and that's a big deal, right? And I don't want to. There's no one that makes a bigger deal about practice. At least that's our aim than we do as a coaching staff. But now it's got to translate on Saturdays, as specifically this one.
Thank you.
James Hale and then John Hoover.
Alex, hope things are going well. And Alex, you've often talked about you didn't feel like you had great depth at the safety position or in the secondary, but you have a bunch of young guys, and some of those guys missed because of, we assume COVID or whatever, but they should be back this week. If you have all your personnel, do you feel like you've solved your depth problems and you have more depth you can trust, or are you still concerned about it?
I think we have more potential depth, without question. I think, to your point, we've missed some guys at times. 14 days for a young football player. I think about some guys that are taking a year off of football. Take 14 days off. God bless you if you can take a year off and be and obviously every situation is different. So I don't mean anything by that, but to lose guys in that's a big deal, and that's something that you just don't make up in 2 or 3 days, type of thing. And so no, potentially I think we do. I think we still have a long way to go to match the depth that we kind of envision. Certainly the numbers are more than a year ago, but no, it's not where it needs to be just yet.
Thanks.
Okay, John Hoover and then Brandon Drum.
Hey, Alex. Jaden Davis had a lot on him, I thought, last year as the young cornerback. Depth kind of began to dwindle all season till the end of the season, obviously. How do you think he handled that, his role last year, and then how do you think he's taken to his new role this year as a starter?
Yeah, I think at times, probably was content in playing. I think maybe midway through the year, we kind of accuse him of that, as opposed to just trying to get better week in and week out. And that's what a lot of times young players do. You kind of accept your role. You're excited that you have a role. And I don't know that we, game 6 to game 10 saw a jump as a guy who's played a lot of football for us. And so that was a major emphasis point over the course of the offseason. And obviously we need to spend as much time when it was the normal offseason. But, even in the fall camp, okay, you coming back as a guy that's going to fight to be a starter in this program, or are you content with just being the guy that kind of had a limited role as we went through things? And so I will say this, in the last, couple of weeks, have really been impressed with him. And a guy that I think certainly showed some flashes last year of being a quality corner in this conference, and a guy that we need to be one for us this year. And so, less on the potential side and more on the doing side. But again, he's got to go do it in games on a more consistent level than he did a year ago.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Brandon Drum and Kerry Murdoch.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for doing this. A lot of your guys have talked about not being the player they were last year, and they keep saying that. You keep reiterating that as a coach and then obviously as a player as well. In your mind, can you kind of walk us through the intricacies of what that is to you?
Yeah.
Obviously that's play, but is there more to it than just play on the field?
Well, I think it for every individual guy, it's based on where you are, development-wise, maturity-wise, all those things. If I was a guy that, contributed limited on special teams last year, then the expectation is that role for you this year is not going to be good enough. Right? That was for the 2019 version of Oklahoma. If you're a guy that we just mentioned, Jaden, you played, and at times you added some depth to the position. You got some, work as a freshman. Well, now what's the sophomore version of you? And we, trying to create that sense of urgency. And if you were a 14-game starter last year for us, but you didn't find yourself an all-conference team, all right? Is that the expectation at Oklahoma? And we win, compete for Heisman trophies on offense, but we're okay being 14-game starter. I just want to be a starter. I mean, as long as I'm out there, I'll be fine. What am I doing, right, to contribute to one from an individual standpoint, right? What's the expectations of my career as a member of this defense, and then also collectively saying, okay, well, if you only get better by making more plays. I mean, that's the reality of it. And so, if I'm a guy that again was Pat Fields, we just mentioned him, that played a lot for us last year, played good football, right? Needs to have more production. So every individual guy comes at it from a different. Laurent Stokes played good football for us. Excited about Laurent. He's got to make more plays for us. Right? Nick Bonito, excited about him. Got to make more plays for us. And so just that constant emphasis on understanding that. And again, as an individual, don't you want to make more being more of a productive member, because it helps you on from an individual standpoint as well. And then one of the things is, okay, what skill do you possess this year that you did not have at this year last year this time? It's thumbs up or thumbs down, and practice is a pretty good indicator of it. And the chief indicator obviously is game days, and so that's going to prove itself as we go. But no, I think everybody comes from a different angle. But the reality is, and the goal for each guy, regardless of what your role was a year ago or how you played for us, we need better. And the film tells us that as we go back and evaluate things.
Okay, Kerry Murdoch.
Hey, Alex, I was wondering if you could kind of give us a peek behind on how Ronnie Perkins is handling things. I mean, obviously a guy that, everybody knows has a ton of potential, but just, obviously he was in a situation probably could have opted out if he wanted to, but he stuck with it, wants to play. And I'm sure as a coach, you want to see him out on the field and what kind of jumps he is able to make for you. How is that kind of, played out behind the scenes? Has it been a positive?
No, it has, and I think he's made it one. If we're all judged by the worst thing we do in life, then my goodness, I don't know that any of us would like to see it plastered, over the national media, but that's the world we live in. And you got to, the reality is there's no ducking it, but what you do, we talk about event plus response equals outcome. There's an event. Okay. What's your response going to be? Ultimately, that's what your response is going to be, based on what outcome that you want. He wants to be one of the best players that played at Oklahoma. All right. That's what he does. And so can he do it this Saturday? No. But in terms of his work ethic, in terms of his want to, in terms of his leadership approach, when guys, have issues, what families do is they put their arm around them and say, it's not okay. Okay. But at the same token, you say, okay, you're a member of this family and we're going to stick by each other. We're going to stand by each other. We're going to see it through, and we're all going to be on the other side of this thing in a more positive direction. And so to say he's a leader on our program, yeah, he is. He's a leader on this defense. I need him. Our defense needs him. And thrilled that he's he's part of us. Now he's not part of us on Saturday, and so we got to pick up the slack. That's the expectation. But a day in, day out basis, he's Ronnie Perkins from St. Louis, Missouri. He's an Oklahoma Sooner, and he's a dang good one.
Appreciate that, Alex.
Okay, and last question, Joey Helmer.
Yeah, Alex, Kansas State kind of always has this reputation of being one of the physical and the most physical team in the Big 12. Given the climate right now with the lead up to the season and everything, any concerns about matching that physicality, especially up front this weekend?
No, I think the concern stems from me turning on the film from a year ago and watching us get completely outplayed by that program. And so, it took all of one game to earn complete respect for that coaching staff and how they play. Again, I stick to obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes into the offseason. So let's stick to facts, and the facts are that film. I mean, that's what we're drawing from, and saying that when I watch that film, like I see a poorly coached team on defense from Oklahoma. I see a very well-coached team on offense. That pains me to say it, but the facts are the facts. And I thought from a physical standpoint, we certainly did not out-physical them, nor did we match it a year ago. And so, what shows up this weekend is obviously the 2020 version of all of us, but cannot respect them more, and they flat earned it a year ago.